Today is going to be a very productive day, but I don't just mean going through a to-do list. My whole idea of productivity has really changed since working in stressful environments where it used to be measured in billable targets and being busy. But I know that for myself, I can reach targets and still not feel fulfilled, and I can stay very busy for a while, but I will eventually get completely drained. I decided to change a lot of things and get distance from that way of working. Now that I can balance my own time a bit more often, I really appreciate when I can spend it intentionally in a calm place, and I can create so much more when I follow my own energy levels. I wouldn't have been able to predict exactly how everything would go before, but I'm so glad that I made changes around how I want time to feel, and it has led to all of the things that I get to make today. Hi, I'm Ling. If you haven't seen my other videos, I've been turning my apartment into a home art studio, and today I actually have the whole day set aside for creative projects. I don't always get full days like this, but I have been trying to spend as much time as I can on things like art and photography, and in the last few months I've been really lucky to be able to do them a lot more. Today I do have quite a lot to organize, especially for some photography bookings that are coming up soon, and I also need to finish a drawing commission, which is nearly done. I'm going to be sending out art prints, and someone's actually ordered the first framed version of one of my paintings, which will be so exciting to send out. I also have some packages scheduled for delivery today, and if they arrive in time, I can't wait to show you because they're samples for a homewares collection that I'm making. I'm designing the whole thing with my friend Sarah, and she lives in London and makes pottery. We are planning to call today and go through it all, but because of the time difference, it will probably be really late by Sydney time, but that does give me the whole day to get a few things ready if I can. I'm really excited to spend some time on a logo that my sister's made, and I want to look into some packaging options for us as well. But I am trying to be realistic about how much I can fit in, and most days definitely are not this packed. My grandparents aren't feeling too well at the moment, so I've been spending as much time as I can with them, and I also have other work on every single other day this week, so I'm really not taking this time for granted, and I just want to enjoy the process as much as I can. I also tried to wake up a little bit earlier today, even though it's definitely not early by anyone else's standards, but I did book in a morning Pilates class and asked my friend to come, so I definitely won't miss it. But it's really turning into such a beautiful day outside, and I know I'm going to be so grateful once I go that I spent the morning walking out in the sun before I spend probably most of the afternoon and night sitting and working. It's winter at the moment, so I'm warming up with ginger tea that Chase made this morning, but Sydney doesn't get too cold when it's sunny, so after Pilates I decided to stay outside and soak it up for a while. I replied to messages from friends and also had a few calls that I needed to make today, so I thought that this would be the perfect time to slowly go through my list. I mentioned before that I got up early today, but it was still late in the morning by the time I started working on things, and that is very ideal to me. I think there's so much focus on starting early and a really common stereotype that this is tied to success, while sleeping in is usually seen as being lazy or unproductive, but I don't think that's helpful at all. Everyone has completely different body clocks, and our energy comes in different phases, especially throughout a whole month. I've always felt more awake and very productive a lot later in the day, and I've always slept very late too. It actually makes it pretty difficult to fit into schedules like office jobs, especially if I lose over 2 hours a day commuting as well. But it's never been a problem when I can plan my own time. So on days like this, when I can organize everything myself, I love having a really slow morning first. I just got back, showered and changed, and I'm so glad I spent the morning outside. It was so beautiful in the sun, so I basically decided to just call everyone that I needed to while I was out, and I took about an hour to walk back. I can tell you about all of the photography projects that I was calling about soon, but I've just finished doing my skincare and using this hair oil that I ordered a few weeks ago. It smells so nice and it's already become such a relaxing part of my whole routine. But I've been sitting here this morning looking at the packaging because I've been thinking a lot about branding for my homewares collection, and I just thought this line was so beautiful. It also came with this note which is really beautifully designed, and the founder Ali talks about how she grew up in Aotearoa and a few years ago suffered from chronic stress and hair loss as a result. So she's made these products to kind of create a ritual, decrease stress and create a calm nervous system. I got one of their jade combs and the color is so beautiful, and I also just love how it goes with the rest of the packaging. I'm just getting some things organized after making a few calls this morning, so we can chat about them all now. The first place that I called is a Chinese garden in Sydney, and it was actually gifted from Guangzhou in China, which is where my mum's from. And I was reaching out because I'm thinking of hosting a launch event later this year. So I mentioned earlier that I've been making a collection of homewares with my friend Sarah, who lives in London, but she is planning to come back to Sydney later this year, and I thought it would be so nice if we could arrange some kind of event in person and have all of my paintings and her ceramics. This is actually one of the mugs from the collection, which I'll be able to show you in more detail very soon. And we should also have all of the fragrances that I've been working on ready by then. The packages actually arrived with samples while I was out, and Jace was just waiting for me to get back to open them, but we can check it all very soon. The gardens have sent through some options for venue hire, and it looks like there are a few different pavilions that we could check. There's also something called the Hall of Longevity, which sounds perfect, and I think if we could have an event there, it would be so nice to celebrate everything when it comes together. The second place that I called was another venue in Sydney where I'll be doing wedding photography in a few months, and I basically just needed to double check if there were any permits that we need on the day. And then the third call that I made was for another photo shoot. So someone reached out on Instagram and asked if I could take family portraits. They have a lot of relatives visiting from overseas soon, and they just want a lot of photos together with their grandparents. And I would obviously love to capture that for them. Whenever someone asks about photography, I usually put together a portfolio and a rates card, and I usually have a few options to choose from. It is a little bit tricky to set a rate sometimes because it needs to factor in things like the number of people, the location, and how long we'll be shooting. But there's also a lot of other costs that people don't really see, like running the photography business, the file storage, all of the gear, and there's a lot of time in planning and editing. But the more I've done it, the more I've got an experience making these, and now it's pretty quick to put everything together. While I've got my laptop, I'm also going to make an order for an art print, which is so exciting. So someone in Australia has purchased a framed version of one of my paintings of irises and the moon, and I think it's going to be so nice because they want it to be an A1 size, which is actually bigger than the original. But I did get the original painting scanned, and it has this really beautiful high resolution, so it can be printed at any size. They also want it framed, print, which I think is really nice because the original painting sits in a wooden floating frame, and I'm just going to be making the same design for them with a canvas print. This is how Jason and I do all of our photography prints as well, so I can show you one of the samples.
There you go. Okay. Wow. Very nice.
Amazing. All of my photography and art prints are made to order, mostly because I didn't want any waste in the process, but also because I really didn't know if anyone would actually order a print, so I didn't go ahead and make them in advance. But that just means that I have all of my design files for each print size ready and saved, and I basically just contact the printer and they custom make each purchase. I am sending everything out with an individual note as well, but I did want to say thank you so much if you have ordered one or if you've supported the process in any way. And if you want to make art prints or you're just interested in seeing the process behind it a bit more, I do have another video with a whole section about it, so I'll link that here. But I'm just going to have something to eat now, and then we can open all of the sample packages. Everything that I'm working on for my homewares collection has a lot of momentum because we're trying to organize the main pieces by the end of this year. I'll probably do a separate video with a full update about this soon because we've made a lot of exciting decisions like choosing a brand name, but for now I can show you some of the things that arrived today. I've taken out all of the samples and it's actually so exciting to see everything together. I don't really know where to start, but we've got 8 different candles which are based on the fragrances that we've been making for the last few months. We've also got the final test of our porcelain reed diffuser. We are going to be testing the color one more time, but this is the overall design and I really love it. There's these very beautiful wooden reed sticks as well in a dark brown, and I just think the contrast is so nice. We really wanted to make the diffuser out of porcelain so that it can be refillable and not just thrown away. So we've also worked on a few different oils which match the candles, and these are the refill sets. We also got a lot of samples of incense. This is just one batch, but there are 10 more, and they're all different fragrances that are kind of inspired by the ingredients in the candle, but a more pure scent. This one is iris, and it's already so nice, so I can't wait to burn it later. We also got some packaging samples so we can start thinking about embossing and printing. And I also asked for some sticker samples, and these ones have a really, really nice texture as well.
This one's come out really nice. There's a lot of, you can get the mandarin and like the sea salt from it, which is I think exactly what we wanted. But it's very strong. There's a lot of citrus in that, which is really lovely. Ooh. To be honest, I kind of prefer the black tea over the jasmine. The cherry blossom's nice. It's very nice and faint. I think this one's perfect for what we want to say it is, for what we want to call it, what inspired it.
Jace made us lunch and got to try the fragrance samples with me. He helped to design all of them with my sister as well, so it's really nice to see our combined ideas coming together into finished products. Now that we can choose the final samples for our collection, I can also start properly designing the packaging, and I can't think of a better way to spend the afternoon than drawing. want to spend some time working on the packaging today, and I find this process so nice because I really see inspiration for the brand everywhere, especially in old Chinese and Korean paintings. So this is the box that we're working with for our reed diffusers. And it is a little bit tricky when it comes to packaging because every time you customize something, there's usually a pretty high minimum quantity order where you need to order maybe hundreds or thousands of pieces, or it can be quite expensive to do. But we are really only planning to release things in very small batches. So to get around that, we're planning to make a lot of boxes that are very simply branded, probably with just the logo and the information about the product. And then we can make some stickers at a lower quantity to match each of the fragrances inside. So we're planning for the stickers to kind of sit from the top and then fall over the side of the box. And it leaves some space on the very top of the box for some illustrations. I've started planning some drawings for these, and I've done them in more of a line art style because once we put them on the box, they will be quite small. But I think my favorite one so far is a drawing that I've done of a dragonfly in a lotus pond. And this one could work for a candle that's really inspired by a waterfall. My sister YULI has also sent through some logo options to choose from. So Sarah and I really wanted the logo to look kind of like a stamp, and she made this really beautiful design which is based on the Korean characters behind our brand. And YULI has digitized all of them for us, chosen some fonts, and also added some brushstroke textures. So I think it's actually going to be really hard to choose between them. I'm also starting to make a bit of a list for things that I need to chat to Sarah about tonight. So I've got things like an update on the Chinese gardens and what we could do for our launch. We can go through all of these logo designs, pick the candle glass color, finalize the fragrance list now that I have all of the samples. We can talk about the packaging options, colors, and order quantity. But before it gets too late, I actually really need to finish the final details for a drawing commission. I did most of this last week, so I just have a few touches to add before it gets picked up tomorrow. I haven't worked on drawing commissions as often recently, but a few years ago I used to take drawing orders all the time, and I think it is really nice whenever someone orders a portrait because they usually want me to capture a really important memory. So I've just finished the final touches on this one, and I am pretty tired now after a whole afternoon of drawing. I'm so sorry if you can hear construction outside, but I might actually go out now just before the sun sets and have a bit of a rest. I just saw a really nice comment on my last video, which was about trying to overcome perfectionism and start a realistic oil painting, and I thought I could share it because it's actually really helpful today. They said, "Such an inspiring video as always," which is so kind. For me, perfectionism shows in wanting to fill every minute of my day with something productive. At the end of the day, I was feeling miserable because I could have done better, but I realized that my goals and the expectations I have for myself are unattainable. I find that focusing on what I did rather than what I didn't allows me to get unstuck. By the time I called my friend overseas, it was nearly midnight in Sydney, so this was all from my bed. But I am usually wide awake at this time, and we were able to go through so many things. She showed me inspiration for a cherry blossom fragrance that I haven't done the drawing for yet, and we also had a million things to talk about to get ready for our launch at the end of the year. But aside from everything that we get to plan, it's always just so nice to hang out and share all of our ideas. As usual, my sister also messaged while we were chatting and offered to help us with things too. If you've watched this, thank you so much for spending time here. It would be great if you could subscribe to this channel for more videos, but in the meantime, I hope it's just been a really nice place to slow down and create